Turn to John chapter 3, 29. John chapter 3, verse 29. My goodness, I came from a meeting this afternoon. There's a friend of ours that visits occasionally. The missions leader and the prayer leader that helped drive the 21-day fast, the 5 million Gentile intercessors that prayed for Israel in May. We just are our two friends. The missions leader, he is the elder brother, as he calls himself, over 30 million former Muslim believers from Morocco to Jakarta. Thousands and thousands and thousands of, I think 3 million is the number of home groups. Our friend who's the prayer leader that helped drive that, they came in. And so whenever they come to town, there's always about 5 to 7 news stories of what the Lord is doing in the Muslim world. So I'm talking about John 3 tonight, but I'm coming from a meeting where I'm hearing stories of, a Muslim leader who's fasting and praying for 40 days for extra power to carry through his plans related to A, B, and C. And on the 40th day, Jesus appears to him. And as the Lord appears to him, Jesus says, I am God. I am Jesus. I am asking you to follow me. And sends him to a nearby village where they're showing the Jesus film. And again, he gets saved. I'm coming with 7 to 12 fresh, those kinds of stories of entire whole groups of Islamic leaders and imams coming to the faith in one moment. Just unbelievable stories. And then of course, just what the Lord is doing across the Middle East, in the Hindu world, not just the Muslim world, but in the Hindu world. So I'm coming with this fresh sense of what I'm talking about tonight, which it doesn't seem like they're the same subject. The title, The Power and Glory of Friendship with Jesus, Friendship with God. It doesn't seem like they're the same subject, but I want to introduce, for some of you that are new to this, I want to introduce the idea of urgency in our growth as friends of God, as growing in our friendship. There's an urgency. What's the urgency? The urgency is, as John the Baptist himself was living in one of the most dramatic, significant, transitionary moments in human history. Think about this. John the Baptist's singular role from heaven, called out by the Holy Spirit, trained in the wilderness through his childhood into his older years. He was trained from a young age by the Spirit, singularly prepared to prepare Israel for one of the most dramatic transition moments in all of human history. That's John's singular role, to prepare God's people for what God was going to do in their generation that was unique to all the generations, going back 1,000 years. And so the uniqueness of his life and his role, the uniqueness of what it meant to walk that out, he understood it. And yet, the thing that plumb-lined him, the thing that stabilized him, the thing that empowered and fueled him through one of the most intense transitionary moments, which in transition seasons of dramatic change, there's shaking, there's martyrdom, there's trouble, there's difficulty, there's trials. The stabilizing force in his life was the cultivation of friendship with God, intimate friendship with the Lord. And so he didn't just think of that. Sometimes because we're so Western in the way that we think, well, I like the intimacy message, Well, yeah, I like that, but I also like the prayer message. What about you? Well, I like the Father's heart message. I'm more of that guy. What about you? Oh, I love the foreigner message. We think of the Bible and theology like a theology buffet, and we pick and choose our favorites. But that's not how John understood his life at all. John understood his life in the larger story of what the Lord was doing. He understood his life in context to the larger story of where the world was going. He understood his small part and his stabilizing force related to the dramatic change that was about to come to his nation was his friendship with the Lord, his intimate friendship with the Lord through the Holy Spirit. That was the stabilizing force. As I'm, sitting in meetings like today, as I'm sitting in days like today and years like the past 5 years, it's abundantly clear to me in a way that may not be clear to you. It's abundantly clear to me that we are in unprecedented times related to the return of Jesus and the salvation of Israel. And of course, the question is, what's the way forward? We don't have to, if I'm right, if it's true that we're in unprecedented times, which I am right, and it is true. If we're in unprecedented times, what do we do about it? It's not an abstract question. We actually have a concrete answer. To the measure that you believe that we're in unprecedented times in the human story related to the greatest hour and era of transition in human history, you're in it. Again, if you're in this room and you're an atheist, I could convince you in 30 seconds that you're in the most dramatic transitionary moment in human history. As an atheist, I wouldn't even need the Bible or you to believe in Jesus, just in terms of the dramatic, massive cultural changes being driven by the technological revolution. The human race, apart from theology, the Bible, and prophecy, the human race is experiencing the most dramatic transition from what was to what will be. And it's not just dramatic in scope, it's dramatic in speed. There's never been a faster, more dramatic societal transformation moment in human history because of technology. To kind of back up what I mean, you invent the wheel. It takes about 1,000 years for the wheel to dramatically change civilization as we know it. The wheel and a little bit of bronze and then a little bit of iron. It takes 1,000 years to dramatically change civilization just by those innovations. You introduce the Industrial Revolution and suddenly it takes 100 years where it used to take 1,000 years. Now in 100 years, society is so wildly different than it was the first 1,900 years after Jesus and the first 6,000 years or 5,000 years. The change in 100 years because of the Industrial Revolution is beyond anything the human race has ever known. But over the last decade, the technological revolution has gone far beyond the Industrial Revolution, and the speed and the rate and the scope of change. Society as it was in the 80s is not society as it is in the 2020s in 40 years. But just think about, for those of you that are around in the 90s, think about for those of you that are around in the early 2000s, the rate, the scope, the depth of change, just on a human level, is unprecedented. There's never been an hour of more dramatic societal change than the one you're living in. So you don't even have to believe in Jesus or the Bible to know that there's never been a time like right now in human history related to a faster societal change and all that's unraveling because of it. Again, you don't have to be a Christian. You don't have to believe in Jesus. You don't have to believe in the book of Revelation. You don't have to believe in biblical prophecy. You don't have to believe in any of the things that Jesus said about the future, except the problem is you all do. But if you did not believe any of those things, when's the last time you heard somebody argue about whether it was the end of the age or not? It's becoming accepted outside of the church that we're in an unprecedented hour of society's unraveling. Now, If you're a freshman, I welcomed you with that message. So this is not unfamiliar to you. Welcome to IHOP-U. The world is falling apart. What are you going to do about it? That's a genuine question. I mean, welcome to what everybody is waking up to. We're in the most dramatic hour of change. In terms of the Holy Spirit, massive positive change. In terms of the world, politics, economics, the social fabric of the Western world, very negative change. But either way, John the Baptist gives us a template. He gives us a way forward to confront that change without fear. And it's friendship with God. That's our way forward. Friendship with the bridegroom. Friendship with Jesus. Friendship with God. Why is that our way forward? Because at the end of the day, when you are confronted with all the pressures and all of the difficulties and all of the dynamics, the one that actually puts the most pressure on you, that draws out the most anger or the most fear or the most worry, the thing that actually presses you the most, more than anything else, is your fear of the future. That's the one that presses you more than anything else. Every single fear, every single concern, every single moment of anger and tears, every single moment of frustration, every single moment of insecurity, all of it is most pressed related to your uncertainty about the future. However you shake it out. If you're concerned with your money, you're not mostly concerned with today's lack of money. You're mostly concerned with what that means tomorrow. If you're in a relational crisis, your tears related to that relational crisis aren't related to what that person said about you or what that person did to you today. The anger or the fear or the frustration or the insecurity or the tears is connected to your fear or concern that what they're doing to you today is never going to stop. In other words, it's when you begin to take today's circumstances and push them into the future, that's when pressure begins to be applied to your soul. So here's John, this divine, sovereignly appointed, beautiful template of how to navigate historic transition at a scale that's far beyond what we could have ever imagined. He navigates it as one who is secure in his friendship with God and all that comes with that. That's my proposed way forward for you. Because you're under and will be under varying degrees of pressure. Again, it is actually, in one sense, it's irrelevant to me if you buy into what the Bible has to say about the future. It's irrelevant to me. You know, if you want to argue, well, you know, that interpretation of this, I don't care. I've spent my life studying biblical prophecy, but I'm not going to argue it with you, not because you're not worth my time. It's the opposite. You are. You're very much worth my time. But I'm not going to argue it with you now because who needs to? The pressure that's coming to bear on all of us is going to really galvanize the right conversations. I don't have to worry so much about the wrong conversations as in years past, because pressure has a way of getting us into the right conversation real fast. And the question is, when the pressure comes to bear in the direction that it's going, when the pressure comes to bear, when we're exposed related to our fear of the future, which, again, it's about I don't feel like I'm in control. That's really what it comes down to. The circumstances, the money, the job, the opportunity, the leader, the situation, the relationship, the friendship, the parents, whatever it is, all of it hits deep down this issue of our lack of control. And there's nothing that settles us into security and confidence related to the future and our absolute inability to control anything. There's nothing that settles us like growing in friendship with God. Let's look at the notes. John 3:29, which I'm going to sneak verse 30 in there because it's one of the most misunderstood verses. It's another one of those verses that gets preached more as a cliche and a principle than an actual thing John said. You'll see it when I get to it. I'm going to start with 27. He goes, John answered and said, a man can receive nothing unless it has been given to him from heaven. Which already you have John bringing us into the idea of friendship with God and what it means. What does friendship with God gain us? Where does friendship with God take us? Friendship with God, I'm going to give you the whole sermon right here, and you can check out for the rest of the time if you're in that mood. What is friendship with God? Ultimately, it is the abiding, living, joyful confidence that I have a God who likes me, enjoys me, fights for me, and is fighting for my best future in Him. So that I don't have to fight for myself or try to make it happen. That's it, right there. Before I even get to the key of how to grow in this, verse 27 is everything. A man can't have anything unless it's given to him from heaven, from God. So that which I have because God gave it to me, and God gave it to me because I'm in a friendship with Him. And He enjoys the friendship more than I do, and He loves me more than I love Him, and He fights for my future, which means that I don't have to. I don't have to learn about the future from biblical prophecy and be afraid of what I'm learning because I'm learning about the activities, judgments, and leadership of my dearest, closest friend. It's like when we read biblical prophecy, we forget that we're reading about our closest friend. We really do. We compartmentalize. That's the negative of our buffet mindset related to theology. I like the intimacy message, not me. I like the foreigner message. What about you? I like the Father message, the Father heart of God. That's the one that really gets me. He's a buffet. He's a library, and we get to pick the book. Again, the problem with that is when we do that buffet style, we're not actually engaging in a relational friendship with a man from Nazareth. We're compartmentalizing. We're going, well, I don't want to think about this negative message. I want to focus on the positive messages. No, I don't. There is no negative and positive. He's your friend. That's like looking at your spouse and going, hey, I don't want to talk about your bad moods. In fact, I don't even want to talk to you when you're in a bad mood. I actually only want to talk to you when you're positive about me. And your spouse looks at you and goes, what planet are you on? Well, in the same way that I only like the intimacy message, I like the Psalms and the Gospels. I don't really like Nahum, and Book of Revelation, no way. I'm going to really focus on the Psalms because they make me feel good. Also, honey, I'd like you to just only say things that make me feel good. That's neither intimacy nor friendship. That's just narcissism. We compartmentalize, and in compartmentalizing our theology, we compartmentalize our friendship with a God we're not really trying to know. We're trying to draw from related to our own desires. We're trying to draw from transactionally. We're trying to draw from to make our desired future happen. We're trying to pray according to our desired future, and we're praying according to our desired outcome, and we're not really in it to know the God we're praying with and talking with. We're not praying with our dearest friend. We're talking to our provider who will bless us and make our desired future happen. But we've never actually talked with him to get a sense of his desired future for our lives. We've never approached our future through the lens of friendship, and so we've just decided judgments and the end times, that's too intense for me. Have we talked? Have you talked to your best, dearest, closest, most faithful friend about this at all? Or are you just taking your conclusion, superimposing it onto God, and deciding that's how it's going to be? That's not a friendship. That's a transaction. You've reduced God to a little ATM that you access according to need. John says it. He says, if I have something, it's from God. It's because God gave it to me. He's starting our understanding of friendship with a very simple idea. I don't have to fight for myself. I have a God that fights for me. I don't have to make it happen. I have a God that's very invested in my future, way more than I am. I don't have to make it happen. John's starting point related to the subject of a future in which he would be martyred. John's starting point is, even when he's in prison later, his starting point is, that's my friend. I know who I am in this relationship. I'm the friend of the bridegroom. That's my friend. That's my dearest friend. And so I want to talk about the end times. I want to talk about the future. I want to talk about conflict. I want to talk about conflict in marriage. I want to talk about conflict in friendships. I want to talk about difficulties with finances. I want to talk about the pressures, the cares of this life, as Jesus called them in Zach's message last week, the parable of the four soils. I want to talk about the cares of this life and the deceitfulness, Jesus said in Mark, the deceitfulness of riches. I want to talk about these subjects with my dearest friend who's very interested in me excelling in these areas in a way that fuels my calling in him. He's more committed to it than I am. And it's touching my dearest friend's commitment to me and to my future, to my wife, to my family. It's touching his commitment, his passion, and his zeal for my future that causes me to settle and to rest. You know, I hear it a lot in the Christian world. Don't strive, brother. Don't strive. Don't strive, brother. And then I always go, but Jesus said to strive to enter the narrow way. Jesus is like the original person that commanded us to strive. And what I find is that statement, brother, this is just, in the Christian life, we don't want to be strivers now. We don't want to be striving all the time. Really, it's a misguided way of trying to say something that needs a little more precision. Now, when it comes to my part, when it comes to that which God has commanded me to do, which we're going to see in a moment, when it comes to that which God has asked me to do, the things that he's asked of me in reaching for him and growing in him and loving him and obeying him, in terms of my part, I am to strive. Where striving gets unhealthy and fuels insecurity and angst and fear and anger and tears, where striving doesn't work is when I actually don't feel that God is my friend. I don't trust that he's fighting for me. I don't trust that he's going to break in and help me with issues that are pressing on me. I actually don't believe that he will, and it's from the place of unbelief that I begin to strive to do his part to make my future happen. That's where we get into the nitty-gritty of why in our angst and our insecurity, we're not finding that emotional stability. We're not finding that place of rest and peace because deep down, we actually don't believe that he's actually fighting for us in every area of our life, in every area of concern. I have a God that fights for me. I have a God that loves me. I have a God that enjoys me. I have a God that knows me. I have a God that is passionate about me and the things that he's asked of me, the future that he desires for me, and therefore he's fighting to bring it forth. I don't have to fight for myself. It gets me out of comparison. It gets me out of competition, the two things that kill you in ministry school. Why? Because I don't have to fight if I'm a girl, I don't have to fight for the attention of a guy. And if I'm a guy, I don't have to fight for the attention of a girl. If I'm in conflict, I don't have to fight for them to, change. I don't have to will. I don't have to make it happen. I just do what the Lord asked me to do, and I trust him. the thing about the future, the thing about fear of the future, when it begins to press on you because the circumstances aren't working the way you thought they would, because the relationships aren't working the way you thought they would, because the money's not working the way you thought that you thought you would, the press of things not working the way you thought they would work, that press, as it really presses down in your soul, it doesn't just expose unbelief, it exposes impatience connected to unbelief. I don't just want this situation that's pressing on me resolved. I want it resolved now. Which gets us into the cycle of transaction and frustration. Why won't you give me what I want when I want it? Why won't you solve that problem I have with that bad leader? Why won't you solve that problem I have with that bad parent? Why won't you solve that problem I have with my bad manager, my bad bank account, or my bad this, or my bad that? Why won't you solve it now? Now you can begin to see why the Lord, why the Holy Spirit was so skillful in attaching this end-time prophetic preacher with the subject of friendship with God. Because from God's perspective, the two go together. When you're in a transitionary moment in which everything's changing and nothing feels stable and you have no idea what tomorrow brings, your place of safety, stability, comfort, and joy. God, you love me. You like me. You're interested in who I am. You're invested in the friendship. You're fighting for me, and everything that I have comes from you. I can't make it happen. I can't make that person stop doing whatever they're doing. I can't make that person stop saying whatever they're saying. I can't make that person like me. I can't make that person change. I can't make this situation different. I can't make my ministry happen. I can't make my opportunities happen. I can't make my safety. I can't make my security. None of it. I can't make any of it happen. My stability isn't in my safety. My stability isn't in my sense of security. My stability is in the security that I draw from the maker of heaven and earth, also being my dearest friend. Some of you, your problem with judgment messages, your problem with sin messages, your problem with end time messages, your problem with biblical prophecy messages, it's not a problem with the content itself, it's a friendship with God deficiency. No, everything I have is from God. No matter, you can say with joy, which is where John goes in the passage, no matter what happens tomorrow, my joy is full. Because my friend loves me, and I love him. My joy is full. No matter what happens tomorrow. But that's not who you are, according to Paul. In 1 Thessalonians 5, he goes, that's not even who you are. You're a son and a daughter of the light. You don't have to say, whatever happens tomorrow, God's my friend. You can say, different than every human on the planet that doesn't know Jesus, you are the ones that get to say, I'm not talking about you, IHOP, you students. I'm talking not you one thing interns. I'm talking about as Christians who have the indwelling Holy Spirit, Paul calls you sons and daughters of the light. You get to say, guess what? I actually, from the Bible, do know what's going to happen tomorrow, and my dearest friend is driving tomorrow's outcome. I do know where things are going. I do have perspective on the future. I do know that we're in the most dramatic season of change and intensity in human history, but also my dearest friend enjoys me and is fighting for my future. Therefore, I don't have to fight for myself, and I don't have to make it happen. Everything that I have that's worth having is from God. I couldn't make it happen. I couldn't grab hold of it. The stuff that I have, here's the thing. James actually goes on in James 4:3. James goes on to talk about the stuff that we have that is not of God. I'll give you a quick, probably too quick, test for how you know if it's from God or not of God. Probably too quick. Is it from God or is it not of God? The things you have. Talking about your friends, talking about your money, talking about your stuff, talking about your relationships, blah, blah, blah. Is it from God or is it not of God? Very simple. Very simple. James tells us, you lust versus love. You lust to gain. And worse, to paraphrase James, worse, you gain it. There's things in your life that you didn't acquire because you're loved by Jesus. They're things that you've acquired because of lust. And I'm not talking about sexual morality. I'm talking about desires that weren't born by the Spirit, desires that aren't shared from your communion with God. I'm talking about your own stubborn, just will that wants and didn't care what God thought, and you acquired having nothing to do with his leadership. And James goes, here's your problem. You got it. So now that you went and got it without God's permission, now that you went and got it without God's initiative, since you took your own initiative to get it, now you're going to fight to keep it. Anything you get that's not of God, you got to fight to keep. Once you get whatever it is that is not God, like friendships, relationships, opportunities, once you get what God didn't give you, you got to fight to keep it. So if you ever wondered where conflict begins, because that's where James puts it. James puts conflict. He puts war. He puts those collisions that we have with one another. He puts it right there. He goes, the root, the source of your conflict is the stuff that you've laid hold of that isn't God. Now you're trying to keep it going. Now you're trying to, what you made happen, you're trying to keep happening. And you can't. You can't. And so you're so insecure in your position. I'm not just talking about emotionally insecure. You made something happen that wasn't God. You're trying to keep it happen without God. You don't have the smarts or the ability to do that. You know it. You're trying to pretend and hope nobody sees. You're trying to keep it going because you like how you feel related to whatever it is you got that wasn't God. But you can't keep it up. You can't maintain it. You can't sustain it. God only endorses that which is from him. He only upholds that which he initiates. That's the joy of being God's friend, is if you get it from God, verse 27, if it started with him, once it starts with him, you didn't earn it. You didn't make it happen. God did. And God did it in part as a testimony of friendship related to your story with him. And so now God made something happen in your life. What do you do next? How do you know it's from God? Because you go, whoa. What do you do next? You tell others, God, this thing happened. I couldn't make it happen. It's unbelievable. It doesn't point to you. It doesn't point to how gifted you are. It doesn't point to ways in which new opportunities can open, ways in which people can be impressed with you and like you so that they pick you. It doesn't do anything to further you. It just touched your heart and you go, whoa, God did this thing right in my money. I was in a conflict. God did this thing. He changed their heart. I was in this thing, this situation, and I prayed and I couldn't do anything about it. This person was mean. And then suddenly, boom, it changed, and God changed it, and it's amazing, and God's my friend, and I love it. And you build, over time, a history of friendship. A history of friendship is a history of wonder. It's a history of awe. It's a history of your heart being moved because you couldn't make it happen. And then, when God gives it to you, because you didn't make it happen, you don't feel the need to pretend and hope nobody notices. It's like, I don't know how I got it. I don't know how it happened. Chris, you went to Israel this past summer. Did you have the money? Did you earn it? For those of you online, he's enthusiastically agreeing with me that he did not have the money, and he's enthusiastically agreeing with me that he did not earn it. But God gave it to you, didn't he? I mean, what did your heart do when God gave you the money to go to Israel? God sent an inner city kid from Kansas City to Israel to grow his friendship with you. What'd you do? He cried. In case you can't hear. How do you know it's from God and not from you? He cried. You don't tend to cry over the stuff you earn. Just in case you were wondering. That's the way forward. The way forward isn't through the stuff we earn. The way forward isn't the stuff we get with our own strength. The way forward is to grow this history and this story of friendship with God that settles our heart related to the future. And we just go, no, I know. I've been through enough of these now, I know. God, you'll vindicate me, or God, you'll change them, or God, you'll break in, or God, suddenly the finances will come. I've been doing this long enough now that I know it's better if I don't make it happen. It's better if I get it from you. He says, he who has the bride is the bridegroom, but the friend of the bridegroom who stands, who hears, rejoices greatly because of the bridegroom's voice. And we think in that verse, I know I've got this amazing set of notes that I'm not touching. They're great. You'll read them later, you'll be like, wow, that guy can write. And so we think, when we hear that, we think that John the Baptist is moved because he hears Jesus' voice about him. But that's not what John's saying at all. He says, in essence, the friend of the bridegroom, think the best man at the wedding. Do you think the best man at the wedding is like moved with lovesick desire because he hears the groom's voice talking to him? No. John is saying, my joy is full. Why? Because my best friend, my closest, dearest friend, I hear the way he talks about her. And it so moves me. That's who John is. John has cultivated a friendship so powerful, a confidence in the leadership of his dearest friend so clear, so confident. He's cultivated a friendship so unshakable. It's just not about him anymore. How do you know it's from God, not man? Because it's not about you, and you love it. The story's not about you, and you love it. The story doesn't make you look good or make you look better or draw attention to you, and you love it. Because you're trying to hear the voice of God, not to settle your unbelief issues, not to soothe your insecurity, not to ease you in your issues of fear. You're trying to hear the voice of the bridegroom because you just love hearing the way he talks about his bride. One of my favorite stories, I remember I wept just uncontrollably for a long time after this, the first time I heard it. But it's Mike Bickle, it's a man named Paul Kane, prophetic man, and they're meeting for the first time. They're in a restaurant together. They're talking, and Paul is visibly distracted. He's having a very difficult time settling in. And Mike's going, you know what's the problem? He goes, well, this is just a bad seat. Mike's thinking, oh, this guy's picky. like, what's the problem? He goes, well, we're kind of in the middle of the restaurant. We're kind of in the middle of the traffic flow. And I'm getting stuff from the Holy Spirit about everybody around us. And I'd love to move to a table that's more secluded. I'd love to move to a table that's more private. Mike's like, what are you getting? And so he goes, well, the waitress, she has an issue, with her liver. She's really concerned about it. That man over there, he's got an issue with his business. It's not working out. He's in a really tough place, and he's very stressed out. He goes, that man over there, and we'll just leave that one alone. So Mike is like skeptic to the end. So he asks the waitress, he goes, excuse me, ma'am, do you have an issue with your liver? And she goes white. And who are you? And why do you know that? And whatever. Goes over to the business guy. Excuse me, sir, are you in a tough place with your business right now? Are you worried about losing everything? The guy freaks out like, who sent you? And are you the IRS? And he was like, Third guy, Mike leaves alone. And he sits down and he's like, this is unbelievable. Like, you're right. Like, you got it, exactly. Paul's like, yes. This is like, to Paul, this is like low-level word of knowledge stuff. He's like, yes, of course. He's like, well, we should do like an evangelistic meeting right now. Like, you do your thing where you like give your words of knowledge and I'll preach the gospel and we'll get people saved. Paul goes, no, I don't want to do that. He goes, well, why? He goes, well, that's not why the Lord told me those things. And he goes, well, why would the Lord tell you those things if not to do an evangelistic meeting and get everybody saved? Paul goes, Mike, no. Sometimes the Lord's just looking for friends to tell his secrets to that he can trust. Sometimes it's not about your ministry growing. Sometimes it's not about your situations getting solved. Sometimes it's not about your circumstances going better. Sometimes it's not about you feeling better about the future. Sometimes, lots of times, Jesus is looking for a friend to talk with, that wants to talk with him, to enjoy. Don't you have friends that you just enjoy? That's Jesus, the most enjoyable friend, the most interesting friend, the most fascinating, complex, intelligent, insightful friend you've ever had, and your prayer life can often be mostly asking him to bless your plans, your future, and your stuff. And sometimes it's just for him. It's just, I like you, and I want to hear your voice because I like it, and I actually like the way you think, and I like your insights. I enjoy the way you're made. I enjoy the way you reach for me. You reach for me in a way that's unique and different than how they reach for me. And I like it. I enjoy it. It moves me. We touch the pleasure of that. And suddenly, it's not about us anymore. What I have is from God, and I love it. And they're all tokens of our friendship together. But over time, that became less important. And then suddenly, I found myself just enjoying Jesus for the sake of who he is. And then as I did, suddenly, I didn't want the prophetic word for myself. I didn't want the prophetic word to confirm my amazing ministry future. I didn't want the prophetic word to punctuate my incredible destiny. It became good enough to hear my friend talk about his bride and just be like, man, listen to the way he loves her. It's your way to truly lose yourself in the best way. There's a Christianese, cliche kind of way of losing yourself for the sake of Christ. And it's the very next phrase. It's verse 30. It's the one I said. One of the most misunderstood passages. I must decrease. He must increase. How many of you have ever heard a youth group sermon on that verse? Yep. Guarantee you heard it wrong. Guarantee you heard it wrong. Because 99% of the time when I've heard a sermon on I must decrease, he must increase, it's some kind of deterministic, I am nothing, God is everything kind of sermon that reduces that phrase to a spiritual principle that applies to everybody rather than it being a personal statement John makes about himself. If you want to know the context, obviously, because of the way I pitted the two against each other, obviously, I'm interpreting that, and I am fairly confident I'm right. John is not making a declaration or a spiritual principle about all Christians everywhere from that point forward. He's making a very personal statement about himself. That, if you'll permit me to shatter every bad sermon you've ever heard in that verse, I think is going to make more sense in the flow of what he's saying. I must decrease, he must increase, isn't a general Christian principle about his worth versus my worth. It's not a general Christian principle about everyone look at God, don't look at me. I'm going to give up the drums, I'm going to lay it down. Hey, buddy, good sermon. It's not me, it's him. Look at him. That's how increase, decrease has been understood for the last 30 years of youth ministry. John's not saying that. He's saying something very different. He's saying it in context to what the conversation is about. What's the conversation about? John, you're like the prophet of Israel. And all of your guys are leaving you, and they're all going to join the guy you baptized. I don't know much about spiritual religious matters, but I know that the guy that's the prophet of Israel that baptizes somebody is greater than the other guy that got baptized. They should all be coming to hear you. And they're all leaving you to go hear him. And John goes, no, I know who I am. I'm not the guy getting married. I'm the best man. I know my part. And what he's really saying when he says, I must decrease that he might increase, what he's really saying is, I've played my part. I did it. I've run the race. He's saying what Paul would say later. I ran the race. I did the thing that the Holy Spirit prepared me to do. I've served in terms of my function. I served it. In terms of what God asked me to do, I did it. It's not, therefore, my time anymore. Once the best man hands the rings to the groom, he steps aside. It's the groom's time now. He's saying this is the time of the groom to marry the bride. This isn't the time for the best man to keep stealing the show. This is about him and his role. I now, having done my part, I will joyfully step back. Now it's time for Jesus to do his part. That's all he's saying. Why? Because there are going to be times where you might have to increase. You might be the most famous worship leader in the Western Hemisphere for about 30 seconds. And then that time's done. I see so many people, they live in the glory of yesterday's spiritual achievements because they actually haven't developed a friendship with Jesus. They've only developed a functional relationship with ministry, and they don't know what to do when it's gone. They've only developed a way of being understood by people according to their title or their function, and they don't know what to do when that changes. The seasons change. They come, they go. The positions, the opportunities, the jobs, the titles, they change. They come, they go. The thing that was remarkable about John, he was the prophet of Israel for his time, but John didn't define himself that way. They did. He never said that of himself. He said, that's what you guys say of me. Yes, I am the voice. He says that elsewhere. He goes, I am the voice of Isaiah 40. I mean, what a statement to say about yourself. He's very clear on who he is in Israel's story. I'm the voice. I'm the one. Crying out in the wilderness. That was my part. I've done it. Mission accomplished. That mission that God gave me to be the voice from the wilderness isn't who I am. Who I am is his friend. That's who I am. Who are you? Online, who are you? Who are you? I've been here so many years. Different ones here and there. They define themselves by their proximity to Mike. They define themselves by their proximity to a leader. Did that important person talk to me? Did that important person not talk to me? Did that person that I hoped would open doors of opportunity for me, did they open doors of opportunity for me? It's like, if they do, you leave IHOP with the most unsatisfying testimony of all. You're going to leave IHOP and go, guess what? When I was at IHOP, I was Mike Pickles' friend. When I was at IHOP, I was Dave Sliker's friend. Sweet. Does that get you a cup of coffee anywhere on earth? No. What does it get you at the judgment seat? Nothing. What does it get you in ministry? Not much. Why are you deriving so much satisfaction from it? That was the issue of John's guys. The issue of John's guys is, John, we hitched our wagon to you. We felt important. We felt like we mattered in the scheme of things. Everybody in Israel was coming to us. No, they were coming to John, not you at all. But they felt like us. They were coming to us. Now, They're all going to him. And John's going, yes, and so should you. My time is done. You're drawing satisfaction from your relationship to me when everything I was about in ministry was connecting you to him. The friend of the bridegroom, what do? You stand before him. You put yourself before him and you go, I've got to flip this in my soul. Related to what brings me pleasure, what brings me security, what brings me satisfaction. I got to flip this in my soul. I got to put myself before you. I've got to be your friend. I've got to be your friend. And you've got to be mine. You are mine. The problem is I've been a bad friend. You've been the most faithful, loyal, trusting, empowering, joyful, invested friend I've ever had. And I've come to you with complaints and desires to change things and desires for transactions. I want you to do things for me. I've never just really enjoyed you, for you, as you are, having nothing to do with me, just hearing you talk about the bride. I want to just hear, could you give me a season where I just hear your voice? How you talk about her, how you talk about your church, how you talk about Israel, having nothing to do with me. Could I just have a season? That's the glory of doing this, the glory of doing what you're doing, spending time the way that you're spending time. You'll learn a ton of Bible. You'll grow your prayer life. You'll do ministry. You'll make friends. But sometimes we can so enjoy the making friends part and the relationships and it is awesome. I love it. But some of you, you're surrounded by friends and you're the loneliest person in the room and you can't quite figure it out. Well, let me help you. You're not here to make a ton of friends. You're here because your dearest friend is very interested in your future with him and standing before him, putting yourself before him. If you get a season to do it, it's worth millions of dollars. You can't buy with money. What an extended season. Don't squander it. Don't waste it. Don't be so quick to figure out what's next. Man, Americans in particular, they always want to talk about what's next. Hey, welcome to IHOP. Oh, yeah, I'm on my way to this. I'm here to do that. It's like, whoa, let's not talk about your future quite yet. Let's not talk about next quite yet. Let's talk about what's right in front of you. The dearest, kindest, most invested, loyal friend you've ever had would love to spend extended time with you as you stand before him and hear. You don't even have to talk all that much. You don't have to be the best studier of the Bible. You don't have to be the best articulator of its words. If you can stand stubbornly and go, I really got to get this sorted out. I need you. I want you. I ache more than I want anything else. I ache to really grow this friendship. So I'm here. I'm yours. I'll listen. In other words, I'll let you lead. I'll let you speak. See, John stands and hears and then rejoices because everything I have is from God. So since I didn't try to make it happen, I'll just keep my win streak going and not do most of the talking, and I'll let you lead. I'll let you initiate. I'll let you talk. I'll let you tell me what's on your mind. I'll stop telling you how I think it should go. I'll stop telling you what I think you should do. I'll remember that you know what I need even before I pray. And not only do you know what I need, you're my dearest friend. You're already working on it. Even while I sleep, you're working on it. So I'll stop being angsty. I'll stop being insecure to the best that I can. I'll still wake up tomorrow and be kind of insecure. I'll stop trying to make stuff happen in my life and wondering when other leaders and people are going to notice me and make it happen. I'll start leaning into you to make whatever it is happen. And then what I'll do with all that now left over, because the angst and the traffic was just dominating my time, now that I have all this extra time, because I have less angst and less traffic and less worry and less tears and less fear and less anger. Now that the traffic has gone down, my time, suddenly I have more time that I know what to do with. I know. I'll let you talk. And I'll stand and I'll hear. And I'll make it my aim and my ache to build a life of friendship with you. Let's stand.